Hello, I'm Bruce Lorincz, and this show is called Bruce on the Loose. I talk to a lot of people in city government, the schools, and other folks in Medina County. Other shows, previous shows I've done, Mayor of Wadsworth, Robin Lawball, was on recently, and we were at the Trolley House looking at that facility and the opportunities for people to rent that place out. And also Dr. Andy Hill talked about all the decision making, all the new employees hired by the Board of Education for Wadsworth Schools. We are very, very fortunate to have Daniel Slife with us today, the director of the Wadsworth Public Library. And Daniel, thank you very much for joining us. And what about your educational background? Can we start with that today?
Sure, yeah, well, thank you for having me, first off. I guess in a nutshell, I'm an unlikely library director. I was a reluctant reader until my early 20s. Grew up in Lakewood, Ohio, graduated from Lakewood High School there, and then I wobbled around a bit in college as I discovered my love of reading and all of the possibilities that higher education can open up. And I did a few things before landing on urban studies undergraduate degree at Cleveland State University with a focus on public administration. I had come to the realization that I thought I wanted to work in a leadership role in the public sector. And I spent some time working in air export logistics while I finished my undergraduate degree, which dragged that process out and eventually brought me through being recruited to serve as a volunteer leader in community capacity for a library levy, for a local food organization, and for a community newspaper. All of these things converged on the library. And that's when I focused on public libraries as a career path and started working at the Lakewood Public Library while I finished my master's in library science from Kent State University.
I'm sure all those positions you've had really helped frame your philosophy and helped you in being the director of the Wadsworth Public Library.
Absolutely. Yeah, the library has a really important role in being open to everyone. And we think of all public institutions in that way. But the library is unique in the way that it opens its doors to everyone and is a space to come and borrow a wide variety of materials, of perspectives, the whole category of human knowledge. It's a really important responsibility, and it dovetails with anything in the community, really. The library can be some sort of an anchor or support institution.
How long have you been in Wadsworth, and why is Wadsworth such a unique place?
I'm actually, October 7th will be my 8th anniversary here. Yeah, so back in 2013, my wife and I had been living in Huron, Ohio, up in Erie County, where I was the director of that library. That was my first job as a director. And our family was growing. Our son was getting to about 12 months, and we knew that we wanted to be in a slightly bigger community. And this opportunity had opened up, and a number of colleagues started forwarding me the job posting and nudging me to apply. And so we spent one weekend down here, and I think it was the Whole Day Cafe was the name of the place that's now the Valley Cafe. I could be wrong about that. And we came here for lunch. We walked around the downtown. We went in the library. We pushed a stroller through the neighborhoods, and just instantly knew that this would be a really great place to be. And the more that I learned about Wadsworth, the more that we fell in love with it and really got very hopeful that we were going to be able to make it here. Some of the things that attracted me right from the outset were just the really strong public support for not only the library but the schools and the high performance level of the schools. And also beyond that, the unique amenities that this community came together to start a community center, and that there had been such a tradition before. The public power, WCTV, CityLink, all these things said to me, a community that recognizes the value of well-managed investment in public assets and a thriving private sector that makes all of that happen.
Yeah, the mayor mentioned last week that Wadsworth, according to the new census, is growing, but at a gradual, a manageable state. And I think that certainly people look at that and say, I still can talk to my neighbors, and city government is within grasp, and the school board, and I think that makes people, really relax and really enjoy their community.
Absolutely, and that level of contact is reflected in. We're one of the handful of libraries, and we were actually featured in a national library magazine for our tradition of a candidates forum, which speaks to that connection and that scale that people can get their hands around. We've been doing that now for 29 years of bringing together all the local office candidates and giving the public an opportunity to hear from them.
I've attended several of those, and sometimes they're very informative, and sometimes they get a little testy, but that's politics.
They certainly can be.
What about the staff? How many employees are under your guidance at the Wadsworth Public Library?
So pre-pandemic, I should say still, we have 50 positions. Pre-pandemic, that equaled about 32 full-time equivalent. So we were close to that number before. We always have a little bit of turnover. We went down substantially from about 43 people, I believe, at the beginning of the pandemic down to 34. Which is big for us because we're a small operation. We're a standalone library. We're the only independent in the county. And so generally speaking, 50 is the number of positions. We're working our way back up to that now. We did a hiring freeze back in the beginning when everything became uncertain, and through attrition got down to that number. So we're working our way back up to 50 as we scale back the programs and services to where they were prior to the pandemic.
That's quite a bit more than I would have thought. I would have guessed maybe 25 or 30, but more substantial than maybe a lot of people realize. And I see people walking across the street. Does the library have that facility adjacent to the parking lot?
It does, on North Lyman, right across the street there, that formerly housed our bookmobiles. So prior to 2012, the library had operated since the 1960s, 2 to 3 bookmobiles at any given time that not only went out into to our outreach services to the schools, which was the primary function, was to support the schools, but also went out into the neighborhoods. In 2012, it was decided that we were no longer rural enough for that type of a service, and with the cuts that had come from the state a few years prior, there was a need to reconfigure. So before I came on board, the final bookmobile was discontinued. That garage has continued to serve to support our outreach facilities or our outreach activities. We have extensive outreach activities. We work really closely with the school system. We go to assisted living homes. We go to the preschools, the daycare centers. We have a special collection of books that other patrons can have access to but are housed there to primarily serve that outreach mission. And we've got 3.5 people that primarily do that work. That's a core function for them.
What about the 7-member board of trustees? What is their role in the overall operation of the library?
So we are what's called the school district library. Libraries are an interesting animal in Ohio. It's unique, actually. We're among a handful of states where the library is actually an autonomous political subdivision, which still relies on a higher level of government or another subdivision to be its taxing and appointing authority. So our taxing and appointing authority is the Wadsworth City School District, and they officially appoint all of the trustees on the library board, and those trustees are responsible for a governing and policy level and oversight. With my and our team's advice and guidance, they establish the policy framework. They set the strategic direction of the library and have budgetary oversight and approval at the highest level. And then the administrative staff is charged with carrying that out with the rest of the team.
How often do they meet?
They meet once a month, all year long. There are 3 standing committees that kind of deal with oversight and guidance on a more focused level: human resources, building and equipment, and a finance and audit committee.
What would some of the duties and responsibility of your fiscal officer, Donna Mounts, be?
Oh, Patty Modis.
Oh, Patty Modis. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it took me a while to get Patty's name right.
Okay, so that's 2 of us.
Yeah. So you're not alone. Patty's job is the daily accounting and management of the flow of money according to the standards adopted by the Auditor of State and other regulations. Her job is to make sure that the money is accounted for properly, that when we spend it, that we are doing it in a way that meets the budgetary definitions and guidance of higher authorities.
The situation with leading to finances, how would you react to the way that finances were prior to the pandemic, and how has the COVID-19 impacted your finances today?
Yeah, so prior to the pandemic, we were on very sound footing, and the good story is that we remain on sound footing. There was a period of uncertainty, which triggered our hiring freeze back in the early days of the pandemic and significant budgetary restraint. But as the picture improved, as state revenues, which account for about a third of our funding, a little bit less than a third, as that picture was much more optimistic and positive than was at some point expected, we have slowly retooled and brought our operation fully back online. But we did restrain our spending to potentially protect in case there was a significant cut to state revenues, which did not happen. In July, the biennial budget was approved by the state, which maintained library funding at its current levels.
It seems to me, and I may be off base here, but in the last 5 years, it seems like the programs of the public library has expanded greatly. Am I off base?
It has been expanding, and we've experimented with a whole different range of things, and we try to keep it fresh. We also have a lot of tried and true programs that we know will always garner interest. That has a combination of programs we develop in-house, people we bring in from the outside, and local partnerships such as the Historical Society. But where we've really experimented over the last several years has been growing our outreach programs into the community, especially with the schools, and also in trying to bring in more of the arts and crafts and introduction to hobbies for people, getting people engaged, getting their minds and their bodies engaged in activities, whether it be intro writing classes or drawing. Photography club was one that we had that we still have not been able to bring back yet, but a lot of opportunities for people to come to the library to learn a new skill or do something creative, and that's been the focus.
The speakers taught area where people can learn to be public speakers, kind of interesting, and a lot of people really shy away from that. They don't really like to be speaking in public, and it's really something that people fear.
Yeah, absolutely. And we recently partnered with the Toastmasters here, and they did a presentation to introduce folks to Toastmasters. Toastmasters meets regularly at the library, or did prior to the pandemic. They're looking to reestablish that as well.
Does the community enjoy your music programs that you present?
They do, yeah. And that's the music. People do ask, well, how is music connected to the library? And the library's really what happened. I can't say that music was new to public libraries, but in the 1990s, with the rapid rise of compact discs and DVDs, public libraries were suddenly able to offer so much more of that than they could really manage with, the wear and tear of VHS and vinyl and cassette tapes. And that really energized that aspect of the archival mission of the library, is to be a source of history, of knowledge, of values, of cultural experience, of expression. And so by bringing the music in, it's no different than bringing the author visit in for the book. It's making that living, making that interactive. The music programs usually have a storytelling component where the audience has an opportunity to talk and learn about the process, learn about the meaning, learn about the challenges of creating or playing that work.
And sometimes they're Ohio residents, could be really right around the corner. And also, I really enjoy this opportunity for not only music, but you also talked about authors. It maybe spurs someone into looking in, as you looked into different careers, and I did as well. Maybe it will spur a young person or someone else older to get into that.
Absolutely. And with the music and the author, you get this finished product, whether it's an album or a performance, a written book. And so much of what went into that is invisible. The labor, the consternation, the research, the sweat, the heartache, and all of that stuff. When you bring the person in, the creator in to interact, they humanize it. We think of authors as these people with supernatural powers or superhuman powers because they were able to do this. But it's not an easy task, and they're able to show other people that it's possible, and that it's achievable.
Could you outline maybe 2 or 3 of the more popular programs for children, and how, again, you coordinate with the schools to promote those programs?
So it starts at the very basic level with our story times. That's from birth, up to those very early toddler ages. The children's programming is the core of what we do. It is all about the development of early literacy skills in a social environment. We are trying to show the social process of learning, that is a community endeavor, that it's about sharing stories, that it's fun, that children move their bodies in these programs, they touch, they see, they speak, they imitate. And as you get into the older age programs, they become more hands-on with crafts that then take the theme of the story, and then the children are doing some sort of craft that then makes it concrete and physical, and it gets into those fine and gross motor skills to get combined together. And so all of our storytime programs for little ones, and those are the foundation. We also offer a series of programs for homeschoolers. And they're members of our community as well. They're also taxpayers. We make that available. We have Art for Homeschoolers, where we pick a different artist each month and go through and talk about the techniques, and then they try their hand at painting or creating like that artist. And another one which is simply a topical one on a quarterly basis. This time it's anatomy, human anatomy. And beyond that, the other programs I would just say generally our outreach to the schools. It's something we've tried to strengthen over the years. We were on a path in 2019 to making it possible for students in any school to have their holds delivered right to the school. We had rolled it out at the middle school and intermediate school. We're working on the high school when things took a turn. But all of this stuff is promoted by, and the school has procedures and policies for how you promote to parents through the schools and what you can promote. So basically we send emails, mass emails, e-newsletters, flyers that the schools then distribute to the teachers, and we have some really strong support from the teachers who are really good about taking advantage of those services, getting books from the library themselves for their classroom collections. And we work really closely with the teachers to get that message out.
And you work very closely with the tutors. I was an OASIS tutor until COVID-19 came, and I would always get assistance from the second floor. The ladies would always help me, and I would tell them what my readers really liked. And of course the boys liked the superheroes, and I got good education there. And Pete the Cat was always a very favorite character as well along the way, but they were just tremendous and giving me an array of books so I could pick and choose, as I had two little guys in kindergarten that I worked with, and they were so helpful and so encouraging as well. So I have to commend your staff for the excellent job, and they take good care of citizens.
Absolutely.
What about if I lived in the township and my children went to Cloverleaf, but I lived at, let's say, just outside the corporation limits of Wadsworth, could I still use the facility?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
That's actually one of the things that's unique about Ohio libraries, and we are very good at collaboration. Part of that is because we're required to. Because we all receive a portion of state funding from what's called the Public Library Fund. It's a percentage of general state revenues. There is a law that anybody anywhere in the state, so long as we accept that funding, may get a library card as long as they're a resident of Ohio. Beyond that, though, we welcome people from the surrounding communities to sign up. We do have some services that are specific to residents of the taxing district. Home delivery is one. We started this during the pandemic last year. We've always had homebound delivery for folks who simply cannot get into the building because of some transportation or physical limitation. But now we open it up to everybody. And so as long as you live in the district, you may have your items delivered to your door and picked up as well.
Conversely, you have focus on the young people, but also you have a lot of programs for the senior citizens, and it really is good for them to keep reading and to be active and maybe be in groups. I'm in a book chat at Suprema, not that I'm a senior citizen, of course, but I go there on a monthly basis and really learn a lot from the other people.
Yep, absolutely. We do a lot of outreach to the Suprema Center, and we also, some of that comes into the building. We have a monthly movie that happens in the library that's in partnership with the Older Adults Foundation. And beyond that, we have, and this is really an all ages partnership, but the crowd tends to be older, and that's with the Historical Society. We're really blessed in Wadsworth to have a very strong historical society, and they hold their monthly meetings at the library, and they meet as an organization, and then after that there's a presentation, and those are some of our best attended programs at the library.
You know, I drove by the library today, and maybe people aren't aware of your little courtyard you have right outside the library, and it really seemed to be very unique and quiet, and a place to maybe read or just relax at the courtyard.
Absolutely. Our plan this summer was to turn that into like an extension of the building by putting a one-way gate out there so that you'd come in through the building and use the courtyard. We invested in furnishings to put out there, but because of the pandemic supply chain situation, we were unable to get that secured gate installed in time to put that quality furnishing out in time for this season. So hopefully by next summer, that we'll be able to encourage greater use of that, and moving forward we plan to program more frequently out there as well.
You talked a second ago about hands-on activities and learning. I think sometimes we minimize kinesthetic learning, and how students, especially even teens, really like to get something in their hand, and it certainly would possibly promote them to get into some jobs and some areas that we really need mechanics, we need engineers, we need people in those areas that we're now really lacking a lot of manpower.
Yeah. That may be, I know we're running short on time, but our early literacy interactives address that at a basic level. So we have early literacy interactives up in our children's section, and these installments are built to encourage children to explore ideas and language kinesthetically, to touch, to feel. And they're loaded throughout with little tips that help parents to recognize the skills so that they can mimic them at home. Moving the body, and there's great research out there which supports the power of a physical book, actually. That there's research that demonstrates that physical movement combined with learning, whether it's turning a page or holding an object in your hand, helps to encode that memory at a deeper level of understanding, that the recall is better, the retention is better, and also the connection, the synthesis of knowledge appears to be better when there's a physical element, and that is learned at a very early age. I talked about it with the early literacy programs. It's embodied in the form of early literacy interactives, and then we try to do that as we move up with hands-on programs for adults as well.
It seems to me with COVID-19, for a while getting kind of control of it, and now the figures in Ohio aren't so good, but it seems like the library is taking really great steps to go ahead and try to get people back. Maybe they would just visit for a few minutes, maybe get a book or two, and then it seems to me they don't stay as long at the library as maybe they used to. Am I on course with that?
I think so. I mean, I think that we are to a great degree trusting our patrons to make wise decisions. We are being cautious. We've maintained a great deal of precaution in terms of barriers, and also just limiting the ability to congregate in the building. That said, we've reopened our meeting rooms. The public can come back and borrow those meeting rooms, and it's up to them to how they're going to organize at this time in those rooms. We continue to watch the situation and watch it closely. To date, we have no known spread that has happened through the library. And we continue to keep an eye on that and do the best we can to keep the library as open as we can safely do so.
Would your trustees be on top of that as well, guiding you in the policies?
So we are doing basically in this situation, the Board of Trustees has delegated that decision making to myself in consultation with the HR committee of the board. And so we work together on that and report back to the board on a monthly basis with the understanding that if something were to drastically change, we'd call a special meeting and have to make a decision.
You talked for a minute about the courtyard, what you want to do versus the materials available. Yeah. Anything else in the future that the citizens could look forward to seeing expanded at the library?
Yeah, in the immediate future, we're working on actually expanding the early literacy interactives. We have received generous funding from our foundation, which puts on the Book in 5K, which we hope will be returning here in 2022. To double the quantity of interactives. And so that has been stalled by supply chain issues, which that horizon keeps on moving back. And in addition, to make some changes to the shelving and the layout of the computers on the first floor, just to improve the browsing experience, the customer service experience, but mostly about furnishings right now.
And get that door out to the courtyard all set, signed, sealed, and delivered.
Yeah, absolutely.
Daniel Slife, I enjoyed speaking to you. I learned a great deal about the public library, and I hope our viewing audience will certainly watch the show and learn some information as well. Thank you very much for being here, and thanks for viewing Bruce on the Loose.
Thank you.
You are watching WCTV, Wadsworth Community Television.